In this video, I want to make the seriously controversial claim that authentic religion is incompatible with democracy, with secular democracy. Now, this is a very controversial thing to claim, and people normally speak in those terms about Islam not being compatible with democracy. And there are some verses in the Quran which might make you think that. There's one verse that says, if you obey the majority of those on earth, they will mislead you far away from Allah's path. They follow nothing but conjectures. They are only guessing. This is Surah An'am, verse 116. But there are similar kinds of principles to be found in all the authentic religions. And I just want to share some thoughts, some Remembering God, Reflections on Islam by Guy Eaton. This is actually the first book on Islam I ever bought from Waterstones in Piccadilly some years ago. I'll just read what he says and then I'll make a few comments. He says on page 75, the general principle that the laws and customs which govern the community can only be binding if they are derived from the revelation and from the Prophet's example remains as valid now as it ever was. In the Islamic view, man can no more make laws for himself than he can be judge and jury in his own case. When he attempts to do so, he is prompted only by caprice, and there can be no lasting stability when the wind of public opinion, constantly changing direction, governs legislation. If the truth were in accordance with their likes and dislikes, says the Quran, then indeed the heavens and the earth and all the beings therein would have been corrupted. Our likes and dislikes are by nature capricious, and the Prophet is reported to have said that paradise is surrounded by things we dislike, hell by the things we like. This is to be expected in view of the human tendency to choose the lowest rather than the highest when deprived of divine guidance. Christians who still accept the doctrine of original sin are likely to agree. Secularism takes the opposite view. The democratic legislator, if he wishes to be re-elected, must go with the tide of public opinion, and public opinion is governed by personal subjective feelings, in effect by likes and dislikes. This tide is, in itself, mysterious, and there are those who have suggested that there is a kind of psychological virus that spreads through a whole society. It certainly seems as though we catch opinions in the way that we catch influenza. How else can one account for the fact that one generation will completely reverse the opinions, that is to say the feelings, of the previous generation, approving what was formerly condemned and condemning what was previously approved? Homosexuality is a case in point. When I was young, homosexuals were sent to prison, but the general opinion was that they should be shot or castrated. Today, disapproval of sexual deviation, even if this disapproval is based on unalterable religious principles, is described as homophobia. Can one really believe that millions of people, thinking for themselves, as they are commanded to do in this modern age, have become independently to almost identical opinions on this matter? That would be an extraordinary coincidence. In whatever terms we define the wind that drives such changes in the zeitgeist, there can be no stability in a legal system which responds from day to day only to passing fancies. End quote. And this whole chapter is quite extraordinary. And of course, all traditional religions, say traditional Catholicism, for example, which has an integralist understanding of politics, the idea that the state, which is concerned with the mundane temporal business of this world, is subordinate in some way to the church, which is concerned with the eternal salvation of souls and has a eschatological view. In traditional Catholicism, we see this in the medieval period, these principles would have been understood. The idea that mankind, human beings, can change God's laws to make what is haram halal, to allow two men to marry each other, would have been not just blasphemous, but literally unthinkable. Democracy allows this. It allows anything. Without God, anything is possible. And as the Quran says, if you obey the majority of those on earth, they will mislead you far away from God's path. They follow nothing but conjectures. They are only guessing. So in my view, and of course this is very controversial, authentic religion, whether it be Catholicism, whether it be Islam or traditional Judaism, in the state of Israel, for example, we see in the Torah, there's no democracy. Now, it's not to say there's no justice. Justice is very, very different. There can be the rule of law, there can be justice, but not man being sovereign. In a godly system, God is sovereign, and he rules through his vice-regents, mankind, who obey the divine law. And that is incompatible, in my humble opinion, with democracy, where man is sovereign and man determines what is right and wrong, what is good and bad, and he makes it up as he goes along. And that, of course, is constantly shifting and changing. We've seen this over the recent years, and it's going to continue to change in the future, where doubtless yet more lifestyle choices will become obligatory to approve. Maybe incest, maybe paedophilia, maybe bestiality, maybe who knows what perversions will be accepted and required to be approved of by our media, by the legal system, by our education system. So that's why I maintain that democracy is incompatible, and that in fact the system of divine law, whether it be Sharia or the Halakha or the Christian law, is spiritually and morally superior and necessary for man's flourishing in this world and success in the next. So there we go. Let me know what you think. Until next time.